This is Lou Lacalci, first head soccer coach at UWGB, and welcome to our celebration of 25 years of soccer excellence. My best friend and former assistant coach, later head coach himself for 15 years, Aldo Santaga, found some from 1969 through 1971 film in his archives, which we've had put on videotape for this occasion, and a few minutes of which we would like to share with you. Let's go back in time to 1969, 25 years ago. Politically, we lived in a world of turmoil and violent change. Vietnam was raging. Ours was a country divided between hawks and doves. That decade saw the assassinations of John and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, the Selma to Montgomery March, the riots at the 1968 National Democratic Convention, the bomb explosion at the UW-Madison campus, draft card and flag burnings, and notables such as Muhammad Ali, among others less famous, refusing military service. At the same time, in sports, major change swept our land as well. Joe Namath led the New York Jets to a Super Bowl victory over Baltimore, the first for an AFL team over an NFL team. The New York Mets won the World Series. The Boston Celtics expanded their basketball dynasty with another NBA championship. And the UWGB Phoenix won their first ever soccer game 3-0 over Colorado College, on their way to a startling 12-2-1 record and setting up what is now a 2.5-decade-old tradition of soccer excellence. In 1969, the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay moved from cramped Deckner Avenue into still under construction facilities at the former Shorewood Country Club. The new UWGB soccer team, whose stated objective was to create a tradition of top-caliber collegiate soccer teams capable of winning on a national level, was housed in facilities at the former bar and clubhouse of the Shorewood Golf Club in quarters painted and remodeled by the coaches and players. Practices were held at Bay Beach with the geese in their droppings, and home games were at Joanna Stadium, where soccer under the lights attracted modest crowds of curious students and townspeople to see this new sport being played in the Mecca of American football. Coached by Aldo and me, we recruited 25 young men to enthusiastically join us in the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build something meaningful where previously nothing existed. In this case, the first major intercollegiate soccer program north of Chicago as an element of a brand new four-year university. And what a challenge we had. The diversity of cultures, ages, experience, and background was incredible, and the only way to weld that motley crew of individuals into a team was to put them through a 2-week preseason crucible of training and physical regimen that would drive out all thoughts of ego and self and drive everyone to survive together, and able to run all day faster than better skilled teams. I recall the first August practice in 1969 where our herd of would-be players were confronted with the first hurdle of sacrifice to just be allowed to practice. Run 5 miles in 35 minutes or less, or leave. Slowly, we drove those 25 diverse Spartans, whose average age was 25, some were junior college All-Americans, others had just 3 years' experience in soccer, several were Vietnam veterans, and a handful had worked several years prior to coming to UWGB. And we drove them into the best physical and mental condition of their lives, and we created a team. Young men from Italy, Ireland, Greece, Germany, France, Thailand, Liberia, and the United States, from Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, and Wisconsin, began to catch the spirit and pride one only feels from being part of an elite unit, in this case being created wearing the red, white, and green of UWGB. The tradition officially began on September 12, 1969, against Colorado College when Fred Gustine scored the first ever goal for UWGB soccer. Followed by goals by Nails Rossiker and Mark Mazzoni, UWGB recorded its first win in a season highlighted by 12 victories and Zach Papanicolo notching 36 goals to become college soccer's highest scorer in the United States in 1969. We could not have gotten a successful start without the financial support and help in many non-monetary forms at the beginning in 1969, and over the years of community and UWGB faculty leaders such as Bart Starr, Gary Knaffelt, Jim Temp, Paul Sherrill, Pete Platten, Don Demise, Len Wagner, Lee Remmel, Chet Miller, Jim Appleby, Gene Edwards, our former U.S. Soccer Federation president, Dr. Jeremy Green, Dr. Jim Hinckley, Jim Kress, Emil Fisher, Jerry Olson, Bill Kepper, Ed Widener, and so many others. And to the players of 1969, a special thanks for being there and willing to follow a dream. John Baumgart, Jed DeYoung, Harry Dries, Jim Fry, Fred Gustine, Ken Hess, Bob Julie, Dave Klein, Greg Cressy, Dan Lang, Mark Mazzoni, Desi McCullough, Zach Papanicolo, Rick Reel, Nails Rossiker, Bill Scheller, Pete and Joe Silvers, Pete Stratton, Don Van Winkle, Jim Wellnitz, and John Zadrazil. And the tradition continues. 20 winning seasons in 24 years, 270 games won, 144 lost, and 36 ties, a 600 winning percentage, 9 postseason tournament bids, 30 All-Midwest Great Lakes region choices, 9 All-Mid-Continent selections, 7 All-America honorees, and men's soccer has been Division I since 1981, with us adding women's soccer in 1987. Those are impressive statistics and measures of a winning soccer tradition. And now, on behalf of that band of wild-spirited pioneers who began UWGB soccer 25 years ago, we say to the men and women of today's UWGB soccer program, the torch is yours to uphold and pass along. Keep it up. We are counting on you to realize our dream of a national Division I soccer title here in Green Bay. And from Aldo and me, ours was a pleasure and lifetime reward of teaching more than a game, of teaching how to commit to a goal and then combining hard work and discipline in a team environment to achieve that goal. Teaching how to win on the field and in life.
film. Sync cue.
Stand up as I point. Pat Schleiss. Ted Hoff. Ted's well known. His reputation preceded him. Zach Pumpernickel, is that right? Pumpernickel, how is that? Zacharias Papanicolo, otherwise known as Zorba. Nails Rossiker, known as Nails. Real name's David, but don't call him that. Fred Gustine. Obviously, these fellows are last arrivals. As you know, the fellows that are in town are a little lighter up on from here up. We'll go into that later. Steve Carini. Get a good shot of that, Dave, so he can see what he looked like. Desi McCullough. Right here, Mark Mazzoni. Dan Lang. John Baumgart. Dave Burrows. Jim Wellnitz. Cutco Buckmaster. Pete Silvers. Don, right? Van Winkle. What's that fellow's? Oh, yeah, Dave Klein. Jim Fry. Greg Cressy. Rick Herber over here is going to be a freshman this fall. He's going to be in the training room as a trainer, and he'll be helping us out in the first 2 weeks as manager. His primary responsibility will be in the training room once we get going. He'll be helping, incidentally, Mel will be doing a lot of the training, and we'll go over this a little later. Rick Reel. Ed Peabody. Jed DeYoung. Fellows that are missing, 3 fellows from Marinette, Jeff Zaratsky, Bill Scheller, Harry Dries. I don't know why they're not here. I hope they're all right. Maybe getting their last fling in, I don't know. And Pete Gajevich from Milwaukee is not here. And there's another fellow that may be here from the East Coast, from Catonsville Community College, Steve Wager. And so there are 4 more fellows that aren't here. We have 21 now. The varsity will top out around 25. And after the first run, we'll probably have about 10. All right, fellas, look, this is a work session. And that is the primary reason I put the word out this week that the wives could come. This is not a date night, and I assume that once you're married, the dating part of it is past you. So I thought it was okay to ask the wives. And hence, we didn't have an overflowing house with everybody's fiancés and girls that they met on the corner on the way in and all these other things. But I do want to welcome all of you to Paris Island, Midwest, as we get started here. Okay, now look, in a little more serious vein here, what's going to happen now? If you saw the newspaper this morning, there was a write-up about us starting. It was 6 columns wide, and if you check it out, St. Norbert's football team starting got exactly 1 column and 1.5 inches. I think that shows you what kind of progress we've made with the local sports people in this city. There are an awful lot of people watching what's going to happen here at UWGB this fall. In fact, I think I can safely say that everybody that's doing anything in this city in sports is watching. First, to see if we fall flat on our nose as a team. Second, to see if we draw any people out to come see us. Not only are people in town watching us, and believe me, I've done an awful lot of public speaking in the city. I've gotten out among them enough to know that there is some, first off, I'll tell you right now, there's a big undercurrent of support for us. But it's an undercurrent. This is Packertown, boy. And they aren't going to come running around with soccer signs and picketing the front of Lambeau Field there. But at the same time, you have about, I'd say 10% of the people that I've spoken to are just outright opponents of what's going to happen here. And then you have the rest of them. By the rest of them, I mean your student body and faculty here, and a large section of the populace in town here who honestly don't know what's going on. Those of you who have gone to UWGB in the past when it was still the Green Bay Center know the history of apathy at this campus and the fact that both Dave Butts and I have made very specific statements about what we hope to do about it once we get here.
The other area that's watching us, and believe me, there are an awful lot of college coaches that are really involved in what's happening here, but the rest of college soccer is very much aware of what's happening here in Green Bay. Those of you who have seen the soccer guide up to this point note that just in the one little entry we got, it's, quote, impressive developments were being made at UWGB, and they were taking the field, and then all the soccer journals and all the soccer media, there is something about us in there. And see, one of the things that's happened is college soccer has had a real tough start in the United States. It's 100 years old, but you wouldn't know it by the number of people that come out to games. 1869 was the first college soccer game. All right, the problem is it's always taken second seat or maybe even 50th seat to football. But at UWGB, for the first time now, a school has come online stating that they're going to try and climb into the top ones of the country and hopefully to get a national championship within 5 years, and stating it publicly. And they're taking it without football. There is no football that's going to come at UWGB as long as I'm here. And that could be an awful long time. I would very seriously doubt that you'll ever see football here at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. So what we're having in essence is shortly under construction will be the first purely soccer stadium built for a American college team in the Midwest out there at the Shorewood site. The first purely soccer stadium. Quincy College has a great soccer team. Their soccer team carries their athletic program, but even they play on a football field. They play on the Quincy College football field. So that we're the first ones, and I check this out. Now, one of the things that I want to point out to you is that in this kind of big experiment we're going through here, I think times are ripe. Football is discriminatory physically. You look around at your average football player, and he does not represent the large percentage of American males that are walking around this country. In fact, he only represents about 15 to 16% of the American males. Okay. It's prohibitively expensive. As you may or may not know, I can suit up a soccer player and really do a job on him at less than the cost of a good set of hip pads for a football player. The biggest topic at the last NCAA football coaches meeting was how to get the cost of football down. And do you realize there are only 5 colleges in the whole United States that are making money on football? Okay, the other thing that's happening is your schools are growing. Those of you who have gone to schools in this area know that just in the past few years, your high schools have probably almost doubled their enrollment. But that football team size hasn't doubled. That's still 33 to 40 bodies, which means that all the rest of the bodies that came into school are sitting up in the stand or they're fiddling around on Saturday afternoons, and they're missing the biggest thing that you can get out of sports, and that's the lessons you learn out there in a contact sport. Okay, so what I'm saying is basically the time is ripe. We have cost on our side. I think there are an awful lot of parents who realize that their kids just can't play football. And there are an awful lot of school boards that are really starting to think about it. And I can point to an example I know specifically, and that's just 60 miles north of here in Marinette, where they have formally said they will go online with varsity soccer as soon as they can. That's provided they get a few other high schools to go with them. All right, so we have to come out here real big this fall and give these people a reason to want to go and pick up the sport of soccer. In short, what I'm saying is for all of you to go out there and put out, not only because we want to have a good season, but also in the long run it's going to give the little guys, which is all of you really, because very few of you in this room could be big enough to play football, and I sure as heck know I'm not, give all the little guys a chance to play a contact sport. Think it over for a minute. Just think of all the nephews and nieces and kids you've known, and just how many of you played on a varsity football team. Okay, the last thing here, before I jump into some specifics, is that all of you have literally the chance of a lifetime, and I use this in my recruiting, and it's not trite, it's true. You literally have the chance of a lifetime in that you're doing, for probably the only time in your life, you're doing something that no one else has ever done before. At UWGB, you're starting soccer on a major scale from literally ground zero. That first 11 that takes the field is the first in so many ways. the first of the big experiments to try and take a college soccer team and give them everything that a college football team has and see if the sport will go over. All right, now look, because you're eating steak tonight and relaxing, don't think that the rest of the 2 weeks is going to be like that, because I think I can safely assure you that it isn't. If you think you're sweating under these lights now, wait until Tuesday. After the administration day tomorrow, we're going to start Tuesday morning with a PT session. Now, with all that gleeful expression on your faces, what we're going to do has to be underpinned by the stamina and conditioning that I talked about before. The reason is, if you don't have this conditioning, your head won't be clear in the third or fourth quarter, because it's going to be all muddled up there with thoughts of, geez, can I make it through this fourth quarter? When is this pain ever going to end? Some of you who have played and haven't been in good shape are going to know what I'm talking about. I see some smiles down front here. Can I ever get any more air into my lungs? And things like this. And when you're concerned with that, you're beaten, because you're no longer thinking about the ball game. You're no longer thinking about where that open space is going to be. You're no longer anticipating, and that's when you get blindsided. This is why you have to have that discipline, and it's only going to come if you're in shape. Okay, my philosophy at this point so far through the 2 points is I believe in conditioning is the basis of everything, out of which one of the most important things you want to come out with, discipline. All right, this loyalty thing, I think we've already pretty much touched on it. But I insist on and I want complete loyalty to you, among each other, and to Aldo, and to myself. You have to believe that when we tell you something out there, we have enough experience and we've thought it through enough that it's for your own good. We will do nothing to hurt you, nothing to make ourselves feel good, and even though you think, I'm not putting you through a 5-mile run so I can stand there and giggle. Now, Aldo and I will be doing as much of the PT as we possibly can, and in most cases this will be all of it. In some cases it may not, depending on how we come out. One of the things I want to see on this 5-mile run that's coming up, and you mark my words, what's going to happen is the first time around it's not going to be natural, because you aren't a team yet. But on that 5-mile run when you take off, I'm going to see about 25 individuals taking off to beat that clock and to try and show Lula Calci that they can all run it under 35 minutes. And you know what's going to happen? There's going to be about 10 or 15% of you that just aren't physically up to it right now. I'm going to tell you right now what I expect to see. I expect to see somebody dropping back to help them out, because you guys are going to finish as a team, and everybody is going to finish in this 43 minutes. And if you run across that finish line in 23 minutes, by golly, you better go back there and help that body that's hurting out there on that 3rd mile. And we're going to do an awful lot of running this fall. 3-mile runs, 5-mile runs. They're all going to be timed. And you know what's going to happen when we go into our season? You go up into the Air Force Academy, where Michigan State is scared sick, and I was just talking with Gene Kenny last week. There's probably one of the finest skilled ball clubs in American college ranks. And he's really scared, and I'm supposed to call him as soon as I get back about their individual players. But he's scared because I'll lay odds that their team will not be in the shape. In fact, I know Michigan State isn't going to be in the shape as you. There's only one other team in this country that I think could possibly stay with us condition-wise, and that's Westchester State on the East Coast. And Michigan State tied them in the playoffs this year, incidentally, with a far superior ball club skill-wise. They got run into the ground in the second half. They went off the first half with a 2-0 lead and hung on for a 2-2 tie. All right, we go up to the Air Force. That's when you're going to realize that what we've done has been worthwhile. Because the whole strategy of that team out there, and believe me, these fellows never get out of shape in the service academies. It's a simple strategy. You don't even have to be a soccer coach to do this. You could be a ping pong coach and just to size up the situation and say, gee, we're 1.5 miles up in the air, and this team's from down in the kind of a humid area and they don't have any height, I think we'll just fast break them to death and run them into the ground. That's great. That's what I want the Air Force to think, because we're going to be able to stay with them, and we're going to short pass them to death, and we aren't going to break under it. You'll be able to run with them. And one of the things I don't want you to worry about is the altitude, because it's far worse in the books than it is in person. You'll find out. We'll take oxygen for those who don't agree with me after they get out there. We'll talk about the various effects of it when the time gets close to the game. But if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to be able to stay with their game, break it by not giving in to a fast break, and then short passing your way back up with short, accurate passes that you don't have to run 50 miles for to retrieve. Okay, that's my philosophy, guys. It's all based on really one thing: running, a few push-ups in between. Out of that comes discipline and loyalty, because as you're going through this, you're going to get tight. You're going to be a team. You'll be better and closer than any fraternity in this school. You watch. It'll be one fantastic experience. Aldo and I will be learning with you all the way through. We're not that experienced in coaching that we won't learn something new every day, believe me. And we'll probably make some mistakes. But if in your second guessing, you fellows feel as though you can do a better job than Aldo or I, check right out with the chancellor and maybe he'll see if he can't hire you. We're all going to be going through this thing together. Okay.